CEO of MyPillow unsuccessfully tried to rejoin Twitter on Sunday in an attempt to evade his ban.
Mike Lindell was barred from the platform last year after spreading election misinformation. And on Sunday, he set up a new account and tweeted he was back. But that account was then banned again 4 hours later for violating ban evasion policies at Twitter. That's according to a spokesperson from the social media company. And it comes after billionaire Elon Musk struck a $44 billion deal to buy the company. CBS News tech reporter Dan Patterson joins us now for more on all this. Dan, welcome. What's your reaction?
Well, look, Mr. Lindell, this maybe seems a little pedantic, but he was banned for not just spreading information or misinformation related to the big lie. That's Mr. Trump's false claims that the election was stolen. Twitter says that they banned him for a number of reasons. He tried to come back by creating a new account. But Twitter says, look, just because you create an account doesn't mean that you are allowed back on our platform. Yeah. Now, all of this seems a little strange because Mr. Musk, when he purchased the platform, said he would lift a lot of these restrictions. But he doesn't own it yet, and Twitter says that their restrictions, these ban evasion policies, are still in effect.
Right, and plus he hasn't been super clear on what he might do in terms of lifting or not lifting bans, right? I mean, he hasn't addressed that specifically, right, Dan?
That's right. Elon Musk has flirted with air quotes, free speech and changing the policies on Twitter, but he hasn't really been very clear about what he will do. And let's be very clear, he doesn't own the platform yet.
Right, exactly. And so what are we learning, though, about this, about the lead up to his purchasing Twitter? Who encouraged him to do it?
Well, there is some fascinating reporting coming out of the Wall Street Journal and other outlets. So we know that now Jack Dorsey, the former CEO of Twitter, was one of the primary champions of Elon to return to the platform. So was Charles Johnson. He's a right-wing activist who was banned quite a while ago for fairly extreme comments on the platform. But some of the primary members of what's known as the PayPal Mafia encouraged Mr. Musk to join the platform or to buy the platform. This includes Peter Thiel, a primary Facebook investor and a conservative activist.
Well, as everyone can see by my print newspaper here, I am an expert on social media and all things technological. I am curious, isn't Twitter, if it is relaxing its standards under a Musk era, if that is what happens, wouldn't they be reliving the past 10 years? Because I'm old enough to remember that in the early days of Twitter, you really could, it was a free-for-all.
Yeah, look, I signed up for Twitter in the beta. That's when you could only access it with a text message, sending a text to 40404.
And there was no retweet button.
There was no retweet button. There were no favorites. And the policy, the platform has kind of evolved along with policies that moderate content on it. And those policies get really complicated at scale. When you have only a few 100,000 or a few million users, it's fairly easy to say, here's a blanket policy. Twitter, just like you said, Tony, has been evolving these content moderation policies along with their community for over a decade. And yeah, if they remove many of these restrictions, not only could they kind of relive or relitigate a lot of the last decade, but they could invite a lot of extremists onto the platform and kind of push regular users off.
Yeah, advertisers wouldn't love that.
No, and how are the fears being addressed that a lot of people have that the digital world is becoming dominated by an increasingly smaller group of billionaires,
and
right?
Tanya, on that point, my print newspaper here, above the fold in the Washington Post, Billionaires Boys Club dominates discourse. Small group controls the information and platforms of our public square. They're talking about Twitter in part.
And that bothers a lot of people, right? I mean, it doesn't bother everyone. Clearly doesn't bother the billionaires, but it does bother a lot of people. Are those fears being addressed?
Well, look, in the 1980s and 1990s, a scholar by the name of Ben Begdickian wrote a book called The Media Monopoly, and that chronicled the consolidation of media companies by a few multi-billion-dollar corporations. Now what we see a few decades later is the consolidation of media, social media, and technology firms into a few multi-billion-dollar individuals. This is a change, but the end result is that we see outlets like the Washington Post, owned by Mr. Bezos, Twitter now owned by Mr. Musk, or soon to be owned by Mr. Musk, Bloomberg News, owned by billionaire Mike Bloomberg, and others.
Surprise, surprise, all white men. Just putting that out
That's
there.
shocking.
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 The Billionaire Boys Club.
All right, Dan Patterson, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate it.
Good to see you.